So I finished Everlasting Flowers and had a good time with it. I kind of want to give Verse some more time to breathe, but I'll talk about that in the end. Anyways, I came in thinking it was like a Yuri title, and it's not. It's not even like the original Mimi where it's like, oh, it's a soft level BL, there's just like nothing here, and honestly that's fine. I don't really care about that type of thing anyway. It's kind of pricey at $30, but it's also pretty understandable at the same time. It's around 5 or so hours, pretty much everybody in the cast is voiced, and it pretty much carries the title, but I'll go through that later. This is closer to something like Marco or like Winter Polaris, where it's more of for the experience or the character interactions than the actual plot, because the plot itself is pretty minimal, but I'll get to that later as well. It's like Marco, where there's a massive amount of CGs, but also not to the point that felt goofy. It actually makes sense this time around, where it's all structured on where they're at and what they're doing. It's like, it makes sense. Basically, the voice acting at 600 or whatever CGs is what sets up the price. It's just one of those things where it'd probably sell better if they cut the CGs in half and sold like it for $20 or so. Even then, it's not really 600, it's like maybe 350, 400, whatever. So a lot of these are just like alternates of each other. The art fits the theme. Honestly, I thought they were going to go hard with the color expression, but they just went from like black and white to just color. I thought it would be a more like smooth transition and adding more color throughout the title, or maybe back and forth depending on the atmosphere and their mindset. It's just sad that it wasn't, and the closest you get from this is like the opening video. Asking for $30 for the soundtrack sounds kind of wild. I'd get it if it was like one of those like drama CDs, since the voice acting was top notch. Though that's especially true for Mina. It's not a title that can be special through its writing alone, and it's not to say it's mediocre, the topic is just not ambitious. It's not something that's just like out there like Demon Bane or Pygmalion. It's a slice of life drama about these kids going through some bullying and going through a lot of shit to getting out of the rut. Mina goes to this lodge to run away from her problems, and through the whole process it helps her out, especially mentally. So it's more like a Jack Jean type of thing with their interpersonal interactions. The funny thing is, it seems to be mainly focused for a specific set of people. You're supposed to be rooting for Mina or Ran, or Ron, whatever fucking names, to get their shit together and finding like the things they do want to do and what they have fun with and shit like that. And it's in the sense that like it would impact you harder if you were in similar circumstances. But it worked for me in the other way, that I'm basically the position of Michiko, which is the owner of the lodge. So instead of having a higher focus on the two protagonists, I'm focusing more on the grandchild, which is honestly like the third protagonist. I don't know why she's not on the title page or the cover at all. It's like, what the fuck? I feel like sometimes she's even more important, but that's me. Also, I have no idea what they're going for with the Steam achievements. There's a couple where they ask you to go through the plot again, and I thought that was like a little point to like, hey, some new story segments or some story points are getting unlocked after the first run. Like, oh, that's awesome. Like maybe a whole new segment where it's Michiko or Himari when they're alone, but you get absolutely nothing. So what the fuck was the point of that? And the only thing, there's the one where it's like, oh, played for 10 hours when the whole thing's like 5 hours long. And it's like, wait, is it really? Did you really expect you to read the whole thing, each line again? And that's like the whole thing. It's like, maybe it's a joke. I was like, haha, that's funny. But dude, it's like, I thought new shit was coming out and nothing came out. Overall, it's pretty good. Could have been a little more concise, but technically all those scenes are used for levity anyways. So it's a trade-off. Like, it could honestly even be more dramatic if it wanted to be, but it looks like they wanted to have the plot to stay grounded. It could have been cheaper, but I understand what they're going for. It's something that has more CGs in the first half hour than other titles have their whole run. The music could have had a little more variety, and there's probably people that aren't a fan of piano pieces at all, but it's fine for what it is. I put around an 8 in terms of like overall quality and enjoyment. I can see around a 9 or a 10 if you went through the same issues, or down to like a 7 or even like a high 6 if you didn't care about it at all. Either way, Mina carries the title, and her back and forth mentality makes it believable. Honestly, I think you're whiny a bit, but I'm also like semi-crabby like the grandma anyway, so like, hey, it makes sense. So this is for the spoilers. The plot thread is that this lodge is used for the problem children, but it's kept under wraps because they don't want the children to know, because they'd obviously be against going. Nothing would get done. Technically, they even only let you in if the child decides to go themselves, since it's like their initial step. It's like their own confirmation that, hey, they want things to change. This was originally set up to have the grandchild to see other people, because she was also one of those things that she always stayed in her room, and it just became like a tradition. So this time it's Mina's turn, and she'll help out the problem child of the following year. It just keeps on going. The title's all about escapism and how to confront what you're avoiding, and I'm not like being deep or shit. Like, no, they're pretty apparent on it. It's a good title that might have fucked it up if they kept on going. It's one of those things where I mentioned brevity is great and it should be more incorporated more often for what I like. I don't need like 10 hours of padding. Technically, I don't think Sanami was all that needed either. She was there to cement the idea that the concept of the lodge had been going on for years. Honestly, she could have stayed as like a character that just gets heard about or just talked through the phone like she was in the beginning. They resolve their issues before she even shows up, so whatever kind of thing. But it was also used more for like another time for Mina to backpedal, but that was already done like twice or maybe 3 times by now. It's like, oh, do you need that many more times? And that's why she's like kind of whiny. It's like it was hammering down a point that was already set. It's like, dude, we know, we get it. So like I said before in the beginning, normally I would give my video or whatever like an extra 2 or 3 weeks to breathe, just so I could be more lazy. But basically I started playing Labyrinth Meister, and that's going to take a long ass time to finish. Normally that's like 100 to 200 hour VN type of thing. Technically I have a decent amount of like backlog of things I've written about, so technically I can just make videos of anything for like all the way through the next year, or at least the end of this year. And I think Gemini's also coming out this month, and it's like, okay, that's something I also want to read, so maybe that one will come up eventually. I think like Edelweiss is out, or not out, but I've written about it. I think like Caller Malice is like half-ish done. There's Eusinki, there's Eustia. There was like Secret Agent, and there was Man Demon, I think, which is like a Chinese type of thing, and I think Harem Kingdom is like the last one. And technically a Magic Way tier list, but that's taking forever to write, and I might just scrap it, like a lot of my shit.